Howdy again, everybody. This is Doc with Thoroughfan, and well, I guess you could say that this past week leading up to the Derby and Derby Day itself truly put us all on an emotional roller coaster. You could not really have thought of more highs and lows to hit on a single day of racing, as well as a week of racing leading up to the big day. And of course, all of us at Thoroughfan, our condolences go out to all of the connections that lost horses on Derby Day, and especially the week leading up to the Kentucky Derby, be it the horses that collapsed or the horses that suffered catastrophic injuries. Truly a sad week and definitely a sad day for our sport on what was really supposed to be one of the sport's biggest days, the Kentucky Derby. Congratulations to all the connections of Mage. It really was a kind of a great story to end Derby Day, along with Cody's Wish, which you cannot help but getting emotional and tearing up when you just see how much that horse means to both Cody and his family, obviously, but also I think more so also to the racing world. Cody's Wish, and I tweeted this out and I said it kind of a little bit, it sounds sappy and all that, but he really may be the horse that helps save racing right now. But one other thing I've noticed in following, of course, everything that's been going on is there's been a lot of questions now of, well, what's going to happen now? Unfortunately, these horses have passed away or were euthanized. They suffered these injuries. When are we going to find out exactly what happened? When are we going to find out exactly what went wrong or why these horses injured themselves, or just the whole process? And in years past, I have done some video segments on this to explain a little bit of the process of what goes on in investigating these things, but I figured I would kind of rehash that a little bit and just describe at least what's going to happen in the immediate couple of days after a horse suffers, unfortunately, a catastrophic injury in racing or training. And it's usually a 2 or 3 step process. So the first step, of course, is going to be doing what we call an immediate or a gross necropsy on that horse. And that means that the horse, after being euthanized or if it had passed away, is taken to a certified facility. In this case, it's usually the University of Kentucky, and their specialized pathologists, which are veterinarians and scientists that specialize in the area of looking at animals that have passed away or were euthanized, and worked on, kind of determining cause of death and all of the things that were potentially found, and examining the body after it died. So you can sort of think of it like an autopsy or a medical examiner looking at things in a person. Of course, we call it a necropsy instead of an autopsy because auto basically means to do to oneself or oneself. So we cannot call it an autopsy on a horse. It is a necropsy examination. So the first part, as I said, is going to be that gross examination. And basically this is looking at the body, preferably as soon after the horse is euthanized or after the injury occurs as possible. Because as soon as any organism dies, the body starts to break down. It's just natural biologic and organic processes. So the sooner these pathologists can look at the body, the better preserved it is, the better ability is for them to make their most educated determination of what's going on. So when the horse arrives at the facility, the first thing that's going to be done is they're going to check the identification, be that through tattoo or microchip, to make sure they definitely do have the right animal that they are examining. They're going to do a quick outward look at the animal, determine what kind of conditions it's in, see if they notice anything on the exterior of the animal. In the case of horses that break down or suffer catastrophic injuries, they are probably going to be doing radiographs or x-rays of all of the legs, all of the joints in the lower limbs, just to make sure that there's no other issues that could potentially pop up that they want to know about. Next is going to become kind of a dissection portion of the process, where they are basically going to carefully dissect into each aspect and area of the horse and look to see if there's any sign of previous injury, to see exactly what the injury was that caused the issue, to see what other damage was done to the tissues in that area, to kind of help them get a better picture. They're also going to look at the entire animal, as I said, from a dissection process. So they're going to look at the heart, they're going to look at the lungs, they're going to look at all of the internal organs, they're going to look at any of the musculature around the area, they're going to look at the other joints, not maybe just the joint that suffered the catastrophic injury. They're going to be looking for things such as bone bruising, signs of previous injury, signs of other inflammation or inflammatory processes, all of these things to help them give a much better picture. And this is, as I said, is all usually done within the first 24 hours, ideally, after a horse has been euthanized or succumbs to a fatal injury. They are also going to take samples of many things. So ideally, immediately after or immediately before the horse is euthanized, blood and urine samples will try to be taken to save for toxicology testing and other testing. And we'll be talking about that process in a segment to come later this week. But they'll save those samples. During the necropsy process, they are also going to save samples of the bones that were affected, the joints that were affected, many of the organs, especially things like the liver, the kidney, the spleen. If there's evidence of ulceration or something going on, maybe in the digestive system, they'll take samples of that. And they will work to prepare those specimens to be looked at under a microscope. And this is the part of the whole investigative process that also takes some time. They can't just take these samples, throw them on a slide, and look at them under a scope. The samples have to be prepared in a certain way to be able to examine the cells properly, to be able to make a pathologic diagnosis, as we say. And in the case of bone issues and injuries, that preparation process takes longer because there is a process where they have to do a little bit of what they call decalcification of the bone, which works to break down the bone a little bit so that it can be properly sectioned and prepared into specimens that can be put on slides to be looked at. Doesn't affect anything as far as what they're looking at, and making a diagnosis, but it is just part of the normal process of preparing a specimen to be looked at. So you have the gross necropsy, which happens first, like I said, within the first 24 hours, and then you have kind of the microscopic aspect of the necropsy, which sometimes can be 2 or 3 weeks later, depending on how long it takes to prepare those specimens. And then once that is looked at, the pathologist will take all of that into account. Sometimes if that microscopic process, takes 2 or 3 weeks, some of those blood test results or toxicology results, all of that will be back by that point. So the pathologist has a complete picture of looking at what's going on and can make their best, guess as to exactly what the nature of the injury was. And they can also answer some questions of why could this animal not be saved? Were there pre-existing conditions present that may not have been able to be detected in that horse on a regular, physical exam? And that is something that does happen, unfortunately. Horses can appear sound and not have any problems and not react to anything that a veterinarian is doing during a normal pre-race exam and still have these underlying pre-existing conditions that only can be found through more in-depth diagnostic testing, such as scanning or x-rays or things like that. A lot of the stuff that California has put into place to try to look for and prevent these catastrophic injuries from happening. So that's kind of the process that's going to happen now. So you're not going to get an immediate answer, and I know everybody kind of wants that immediate, what happened, why did it happen, things like that. But unfortunately, the science takes time a lot of the time, and we're just going to have to wait a little bit to see exactly what these reports find, talking to the veterinarians that were involved in treating the horses, talking to the veterinarians that were involved in examining the horses, talking to all of the other connections of these horses that sadly lost their lives. Investigations, when they're done right, take time. And like I said, I know we all want immediate answers in today's day and world, but really to get it right, you've got to take a little bit of time. And so that's what's going to happen. So I wanted to kind of explain again the process of what's going to happen with these horses. And it's the same thing, I know I'm talking about horses that suffered those catastrophic injuries while racing. The 2 horses that collapsed after racing that were trained by Safi Jofis Jr. Will go through the same process. It'll be a little bit more of an investigative process because you don't have an overt injury, that led to the horse being euthanized or succumbing. You have kind of a mystery on your hands. And as we've talked about before, and this came up in the Medina Spirit case, sometimes you do a complete necropsy, you do all the examinations, you do all the testing, and you just can't find anything. And unfortunately, that does happen from time to time. And we'll just have to, again, kind of wait and see what these investigations show. So again, I just wanted to kind of jump on again and explain the process of a necropsy, what it is, the stages of it, and how things are going to progress from here. So I hope that does answer some of those questions. Again, our sincerest condolences to everybody who was involved in those horses that, sadly lost their lives on Derby week and Derby day. The sport does need to do better. I think that goes without question, but they are making progress. And much as sad as this is to see, things are better than they were even 5 or 10 years ago. And we are going to keep moving forward and keep pressing for them to continue to do things better to ensure the safety and welfare as best as possible for all of the equine athletes participating. And as I said, coming up in another couple of days, we are going to break down a little bit more drug testing, and I'm going to take a little bit of a different task on it, a little bit more of a visual aid aspect thing, to hopefully help people understand why, as they always say, the cheaters are one step ahead of the testers, and why it can be so hard to test for certain substances when people just say, well, test the horse. There's a lot of things you can test for, and we're going to go through that and explain why it can be so hard sometimes to find a performance-enhancing substance or a drug doping agent in these animals when blood tests are taken. So if anybody has any further questions about what may be next in the investigatory processes, and any more questions about a necropsy in general or what is done in these investigations, please feel free to drop it in the comments section of either the video or whatever social media platform we're sharing this on. I will be happy to try to answer them, and we will keep you up to date on what's going on with these cases and what is found as the investigations proceed. So again, congratulations to Mage on winning the Kentucky Derby and all of his connections. Hope to see him in the Preakness in a couple of weeks, where we'll be going for that second leg of the Triple Crown. And as always, if you are looking for the most up-to-date and accurate information out there, made specifically for you, the racing fan, by us, the racing fans, there's only one place for you to turn, and that's right here at Thorofan.